For my topic, I decided to look at acceleration versus enrichment for gifted education programs. First, it is important to look at the definitions of each of these to differentiate what they are. Acceleration can be defined as moving faster through academic content, which typically includes offering standard curriculum to a student at a younger than usual age. So what this means is that students will be given more advanced academic work at a younger age, and I'll discuss later the different types of forms this can be taken in. Enrichment refers to richer and more varied educational experiences, a curriculum that is modified to provide greater depth and breadth than is generally provided. So through enrichment, this can be also done in many different forms, but I will discuss some of the most common shortly. Okay, first we'll look at acceleration in a little more detail. Acceleration, as I mentioned, comes in many different forms. There are 18 as defined by Davis. One is early admission to kindergarten, grade skipping, curriculum compacting, advanced courses, and early graduation are all types of acceleration where students are given more difficult academic work at an earlier age to meet their needs. The first one I will look at is early admission to kindergarten. Some pros for that are that students are academically challenged. It is an accommodation that is free, so instead of providing extra work or extra support, the student is just entered into kindergarten or sometimes first grade sooner than their peers. Another benefit to early admission is it can relieve the boredom, frustration, and disruptiveness. A lot of times when students are not challenged enough to their full abilities, they'll see some of these negative aspects that could come up. And another thing that is a positive of this is it builds study skills and self-concepts and productivity. So students learn that they will have to work for something rather than it just always coming easily with this extra academic challenge through early admission. Some important things to look at, or cons of early admission to kindergarten, is sometimes students may be academically prepared, but socially and emotionally they may be immature compared to the other kindergartners that they will be placed in a classroom with. So that is one important aspect to look at before deciding to admit students early to kindergarten. Another con stated by Davis is that some believe that they miss out on childhood experiences by being pushed at an early age. And a third one is the possibility of low achievement with higher competition. So if they are admitted early to kindergarten, they will be with peers that will push them farther because those students will have had that extra year of preschool or extra education to help them. A second example of acceleration is curriculum compacting. This can be defined as a technique for differentiating instruction that allows teachers to make adjustments to curriculum for students who have already mastered the material to be learned. So essentially this example, it promotes student learning by figuring out where the student is at and what areas they will need to be accelerated in, and doing so accordingly. So more about curriculum compacting. Students need a challenge to build work ethic and study habits. If not, they may lack problem solving and result underachieve. So as I discussed with the early admission to kindergarten, this is a consequence that could come if students are not properly accelerated and challenged within their academic work. So if they have their curriculum compacted in the area that is necessary for them, then they will hopefully avoid these lack of skills such as problem solving or critical thinking that they would have to learn through hard work, and that will be more difficult to learn at an older age rather than a younger age. A second point For bright students, acceleration has long-term beneficial effects both academically and socially. So, a concern about the early admission to kindergarten was sometimes students are not socially prepared. What is good about curriculum compacting, they don't necessarily have to be put with an older group of peers. This can be done in the general education classroom through the classroom teacher and help from the resource teacher of coming up with a plan to challenge this individual student or group of students. If it is not done in the general education classroom, sometimes it will be done in small groups for pull-out groups. A certain subject, such as a high ability group for math, could be pulled out and they could work on the skills that are essential to their growth. So this can be used with any subject or skill. Okay, so the second option is enrichment for a high ability learner program. So the purpose of enrichment, this is to help the students find their spark, what really motivates them. So motivating students to pursue their educational passions and grow into the learners they are all inherently able to be is both a simple and a complex equation. So as an educator, everyone's goal is to help students grow into their best possible role and future. So with some students, it is more difficult than with others. Enrichment strategies essentially are delivery methods for achieving process and content goals. Process goals include developing such skills or processes as creative thinking and problem solving, critical skills, scientific thinking, or others. And enrichment, as I stated, helps students find their passions. So through various activities or kind of exploration situations, students are able to be exposed to more of a variety of topics, and this can help them find something they're truly interested in. As well as acceleration, there are many types of enrichment. So a few of these types I will discuss in more detail, but here's a list of a few. Within the general education classroom, there can be enrichment activities that are done individually for a student, for a small group, or for the whole class. There can be a pull-out program where a small group is taken and they study a specific enrichment activity. There's after-school programs, such as like a STEM program, or sometimes a cooking, just an after-school program that exposes students to a different form of enrichment that they might otherwise not be. Weekend programs, summer programs, field trips, mentorships, apprentice programs, and there's many more. Those are just a broad list of some of the types of enrichment that there are. So one that is very common in especially elementary school, but even high schools with college visits and stuff, is field trips. So this can benefit all students. Clearly field trips can be done with a whole class or a small group, depending on what is being studied and the resources that are available. So during field trips, students apply and learn a range of skills and knowledge, including collection and synthesis of information, reasoning, collaboration, and leadership. So field trips go beyond just your hands-on application and seeing things that they are learning. Students are able to build skills through going on field trips. They're able to see what they're learning. They're able to synthesize this information. They're able to build reasoning skills, work together as teams, and for your high ability students and other students as well, there's a lot of leadership opportunities involved. Also, it is most effective with a set purpose and connected to classroom curriculum or projects. So a field trip should have an alignment with the curriculum that is being taught within the classroom, and these projects should relate back and forth and correlate together, and that proves to be the most effective way for field trips to benefit students. Another form of enrichment that I'll talk about is the SEM-R, which is a school-wide enrichment reading framework based upon Renzulli's enrichment triad model. So this is a whole school model of enrichment which provides interest for students in reading, engagement, and teaches students responsibility in their reading. So it teaches students responsibility and self-efficacy, or the belief we have in our own abilities. So this three-step model is guidance for teachers and students on how to best enrich reading and help students grow individually. So the first step is where the teacher models a lot of reading. They expose students to different types of genres and different projects related to reading, and the student during this stage is kind of absorbing it all. They're being exposed to this material, they're being engaged through higher order thinking questions that the teacher models, and it's the framework for their independence that they'll eventually reach to. The second step of the triad model, the student begins to gain responsibility. They start picking out their own reading materials and tracking what they're reading. During this time, the teacher is monitoring their reading, keeping records, assisting students when needed. But during this second part, the student starts to gain responsibility, and with projects, the teachers are still guiding that. But as we move into the third step, students start to choose their own enrichment activities. So this might be a creative writing activity, or a station, or researching a topic that they've read about. So the student is able to dig a little deeper into their reading, and the teacher is there to monitor and guide and facilitate the students in their chosen activities. So this is a version of enrichment that can be done throughout a whole school and proves to be beneficial to all students, including your high ability learners, as well as your general education students. Okay, so now that we've went through both acceleration and enrichment, we need to think about which one is a better option for your school. So some schools may not have the resources to provide both, or one or the other. So let's see which one is the most appropriate. Okay, so enrichment and acceleration. Both acceleration and enrichment accommodate the high abilities and individual needs of gifted students. Both lead to greater knowledge and skills, and both help develop creativity and other thinking skills. So both of these prove to benefit students, not necessarily one more than the other, and they build skills that students need, as well as developing their content knowledge. So any well-rounded, coherent, and long-range gifted and talented program will provide both enrichment and acceleration opportunities. So for a student to successfully succeed, they need to be offered both of these things. So acceleration could look a number of different ways for a student, such as skipping a grade, curriculum compacting, early graduation, more difficult courses in high school that they take. And enrichment could also look different ways, such as students just researching for themselves, or a field trip, or a whole wide school model. So it can look a number of different ways based upon the school and what they have available. The best instruction for gifted children is tailored to their needs and is diagnostic perspective in orientation. That means that their current skill or knowledge is assessed, and new learning tasks are then selected to be appropriately challenging. So students must be looked at as individual cases rather than a whole group, because each student has their strengths and their weaknesses and skills that need developed. So it's important to look at them as individual cases to come up with the most appropriate plan. So one student may benefit just from enrichment activities, some from just acceleration, and some from a combination. So based on their levels, based upon their data from testing and experiences, it's important to look at them individually to see which will be the most appropriate plan for them. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind is educational equity. So what this means is educational equity does not mean educational sameness. Equity respects individual differences and readiness to learn, and recognizes the value of each student. So rather than giving each student the same supports, students are all different and have all different needs. So your high ability learner will not have the same needs and need the same resources as your general education student or special education student. All of these students need resources tailored to them to help them succeed and reach their maximum growth possible. So all in all, acceleration and enrichment are both necessary in an effective, gifted and talented school program. Although there are many different ways that this can be done, both of them should be included as options to best benefit the students of your population.